Taman felt the cold metal table against his bare skin. His body hurt everywhere. The alien creatures had been doing terrible things to him for weeks now. They called it research, but Taman knew better. They enjoyed watching him suffer. The Cathari looked like giant lizards walking on two legs. Their skin was dark green and covered in hard scales. Yellow eyes stared at Taman without any feeling. They spoke in harsh clicking sounds that hurt his ears. "The human still shows resistance," one of them said in broken human language. "This is most interesting. Other species break much faster." Taman tried to move, but thick metal bands held his arms and legs to the table. Tubes ran from his body to strange machines that beeped and flashed. The aliens were studying everything about him, his blood, his thoughts, even his dreams. "Why do you not give up?" another Cathari asked. This one wore more decorations on its uniform. It seemed to be in charge. "Your species is weak. Your technology is simple. You have no chance of rescue." Taman looked at the creature and smiled despite the pain. "Because someone will come for me. Humans don't leave each other behind." The alien made a sound like laughter. "Foolish thinking. Your kind sent you alone to this world. They have already forgotten you exist." But Taman knew they were wrong. Somewhere in space, his people were looking for him. They would never stop looking. Far away from the prison planet, Captain Sora sat in her command chair aboard the ship Dawn's Promise. She was a small woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her crew of 12 trusted her completely. "Captain," said Hyunwoo from the weapons station. He was young but smart, with hands that never shook during battle. "We're getting something on the emergency channel." Sora turned to look at him. "Put it through." A weak signal filled the bridge. It was mostly static, but buried in the noise was a pattern. A code that every human ship captain knew by heart. Someone was in trouble and needed help. "It's coming from the Veltar system," said Kyung-soo from navigation. He was the best pilot Sora had ever seen, able to fly through asteroid fields like they were empty space. "That's deep in Cathari territory." "Can you clean up the signal?" Sora asked. Ji-Hai worked at her engineering station. She could make any machine do what she wanted, even when it should be impossible. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "I'm trying, Captain. There. Got it." Taman's voice came through the speakers. It was weak and full of pain, but still human. Still alive. "This is Dr. Taman of the research station New Hope. I'm being held prisoner on Veltar Prime. The Cathari they're doing experiments. If anyone receives this, please tell my family I tried to stay strong." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what Cathari experiments meant. No one who went into their labs came out the same. Most didn't come out at all. "Captain," said Minho from the communications station. He was quiet most of the time, but he never missed anything important. "Earth Command says we're not supposed to enter Cathari space. It could start a war." Sora stood up. Her crew watched her, waiting for orders. They all knew what she was thinking. One human was trapped and suffering. The right thing to do was clear, even if it meant breaking rules. "How many Cathari ships are in that system?" she asked. Hyunwoo checked his sensors. "At least 50, Captain. Maybe more. We're just one exploration ship." "And they think humans are weak," Sora said quietly. "They think we won't risk ourselves. For one person." She looked around at her crew. "They're about to learn how wrong they are. Set course for Veltar Prime." "Captain," Jiwon said from the diplomatic station. She handled all contact with alien species and always tried to find peaceful solutions. "Maybe we should contact the Cathari government first. Try to negotiate for his release." Sora shook her head. "Taman doesn't have time for negotiations. Besides, when did the Cathari ever listen to reason?" The ship turned toward Cathari space. It would take 3 days to reach Veltar Prime, even at maximum speed. 3 more days of torture for Taman. Sora hoped he could hold on that long. Back on the prison planet, Taman was learning things about his captors. The Cathari thought they were perfect soldiers, but they had weaknesses. They followed orders without thinking. They never expected attacks from impossible directions. Most importantly, They didn't understand why humans cared about each other. Your pack bonding. Behavior is a serious flaw, the lead scientist told him during another session. It makes you do foolish things. Risk your lives for others. This weakness will destroy your species. Taemin laughed, even though it hurt. You think caring about each other makes us weak? That's why you'll never understand us. The alien's yellow, eyes narrowed. Explain this foolishness. When you threaten one human, you threaten all humans, Taemin said. We're not just individuals. We're family. And family doesn't abandon family. The Cathari made notes on his tablet. To him, these were just interesting observations about an inferior species. He didn't understand that he was documenting the reason for his civilization's future defeat. The Dawn's Promise reached the edge of the Veltar system on the third day. Sora gathered her crew for a final briefing. They were about to attempt something that should be impossible. 12 of us against 50 of them, she said. The Cathari have bigger ships and more weapons, but they have one big weakness. They think like machines. They follow patterns, do exactly what their training tells them to do. What's the plan, Captain? Asked Yunsu. She was the ship's doctor, but she could also handle weapons when needed. Her steady hands saved lives in surgery and battle. We don't fight their ships, Sora said. We sneak past them. Get to the planet, find Taemin, get out before they know what happened. How do we find him on an entire planet? Hyunwoo asked. Jihye smiled. I've been working on that. His research station had special equipment. I can track the energy signature from orbit. If he's anywhere near that equipment, we'll find him. The plan was simple but dangerous. Use the ship's stealth systems to slip past the Cathari fleet. Land on the planet's night side. Find the prison facility. Break in, grab Taemin, and run before the aliens knew what hit them. Remember, Sora told her crew, Cathari security thinks in straight lines. They put guards at obvious places and expect attacks from obvious directions. We're going to hit them from angles they never imagined. The Dawn's Promise moved deeper into the system, invisible to Cathari sensors. The alien ships patrolled in perfect formations, never breaking pattern, never checking their blind spots. They had no idea death was sliding past them in the darkness. On the planet's surface, Taemin felt something change, a feeling he couldn't explain, like the air before a storm. The Cathari guards seemed nervous, though he didn't know why. Something comes, one guard said to another in their clicking language. They didn't know Taemin had learned to understand them during his captivity. Impossible, the other replied. No species would attack this facility, it would be suicide. Taemin smiled in the darkness of his cell. The cavalry was coming, just like he knew they would. The Cathari were about to learn what happened when you hurt a human's family. In space above, Sora watched the prison facility appear on her screens. It was a fortress built into the side of a mountain, surrounded by walls and guard towers, designed to keep prisoners in and enemies out. Looks tough, Kyungsoo said. Looks like they never dealt with humans before, Sora replied. Take us down. Time to bring our boy home. The rescue was about to begin. 12 humans against an empire. In any logical universe, it should have been no contest. But the Cathari were about to discover that humans didn't always follow logic. Sometimes they followed their hearts instead. The rescue had worked, but barely. Taemin lay in the medical bay of the Dawn's Promise, his body covered in bandages and connected to life support machines. Dr. Yunsu worked around the clock to keep him alive. How is he? Sora asked, standing beside the medical bed. Yunsu looked tired. She had been operating for 6 hours straight, fixing damage the Cathari had done to Taemin's body. He'll live, but Captain, what they did to him. She shook her head. I've never seen anything like it. They weren't just studying him. They were trying to break his mind. Taemin's eyes opened slowly. He looked around the room until he found Sora's face. You came, he whispered. I knew you would come. Of course we came, Sora said. She sat down beside his bed. Tell me what happened down there. Taemin's story came out in pieces over the next few days. The Cathari hadn't just been doing medical experiments. They were trying to understand something they called pack bonding behavior in humans. They wanted to know why humans risked themselves for other humans. They think it's a disease, Taemin said during one of his stronger moments. A mental illness that makes us weak. They wanted to find a way to cure it. Cure caring about each other? Hyunwoo asked. He was sitting nearby, cleaning his weapon. That's insane. Not to them, Taemin replied. The Cathari don't care about individuals, only the group, the Empire. They can't understand why we would risk everything to save one person. Jihai looked up from her computer. That's why our rescue worked. They never expected anyone to come for you. Their entire defense was built around stopping armies, not a small group trying to save one man. But the rescue had consequences. The Cathari were angry and embarrassed. War Master Velkoth, the leader of their forces in this sector, had sent messages across the Empire. A small human ship had made him look like a fool. This could not stand. They're hunting us, Minho reported from his station. 50 ships are chasing us across 3 systems. They want us alive so they can make an example. Let them chase, So-Ra said. We're faster and smarter. They'll never catch us. But something bigger was happening. Word of Taemin's rescue was spreading through human space. Not through official channels, but through the networks that connected every human ship, station, and colony. The story grew with each telling. On Earth, Colonel Dong-hyun read the reports in his office. He was an old soldier with gray hair and scars from a dozen battles. He had seen what war could do to good people. But this was different. This wasn't about territory or resources. This was about family. Sir, his aide said, bringing him another message. We're getting requests from ship captains across the sector. They want permission to help with the rescue. The rescue already happened, Dong-hyun said. Yes, sir. But they want to help with what comes next. Dong-hyun knew what that meant. The Cathari were hunting the Dawn's Promise. Soon they would corner So-Ra and her crew. When that happened, those 12 humans would need backup. On the naval station orbiting Mars, Commander Hai-Wan stared at her tactical displays. She was known throughout the fleet as the smartest strategic mind of her generation. Right now, she was studying every Cathari ship movement in the sector. They're not just chasing one ship, she told her staff. They're positioning for something bigger. War Master Velkoth is planning a public execution. He wants every species in the galaxy to see what happens when you defy the Cathari. What do we do? Asked her second in command. Hae-Won was quiet for a long moment. Official policy said they should do nothing. Starting a war with the Cathari Empire would cost millions of lives. But she kept thinking about the medical reports from Dr. Yun-Soo. What they had done to Taemin wasn't just torture. It was an attempt to destroy everything that made humans human. Send a message to every ship captain in the fleet, she said finally. Tell them about Taemin. Let them make their own choice. The message went out on secure channels. It contained Taemin's medical records, his testimony about Cathari experiments, and footage of his condition when the Dawn's Promise found him. It also contained one simple question. What are you going to do about it? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ship captains from across human space began sending the same message back. We're coming. Not all of them, of course. Many followed orders and stayed at their posts. But enough said yes to matter. Hundreds of ships began moving toward the edge of Cathari territory. Officially, they were on training exercises or patrol missions. Unofficially, they were gathering for war. Youngja sat in her intelligence office, coordinating with resistance groups on worlds occupied by the Cathari. The news about Taemin had reached even these oppressed populations, and they were eager to help. The Cathari do the same experiments on our people, one resistance leader told her over encrypted communication. But no one ever comes to rescue us. That's about to change, Youngja promised. On the Dawn's Promise, Taemin was getting stronger. The physical wounds were healing, but the mental ones ran deeper. He had nightmares about the Cathari laboratory. Sometimes he woke up screaming. I keep thinking about all the others, he told Yun-Soo during one of his therapy sessions. How many beings are in Cathari labs right now? How many are suffering like I did? That's not your responsibility, Yun-Soo said gently. You survived. That's enough. But Taemin shook his head. No, it's not. They chose me because they wanted to understand humans. Well, now they're going to understand us completely. They're going to learn what happens when humans get angry. The chase continued through space. The Dawn's Promise stayed ahead of the Cathari fleet, but just barely. Kyung-soo's piloting skills kept them alive, threading through asteroid fields and nebulae where the bigger alien ships couldn't follow. They're getting closer, Hyunwoo reported. We can't run forever. We don't have to, So-ra said. She was looking at long-range sensors, watching something the Cathari hadn't noticed yet. Look at this. On the edge of sensor range, ships were gathering. Human ships, hundreds of them, all converging on their position. The cavalry wasn't coming. It was already here. War Master Velkoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the same sensor readings. His yellow eyes widened with surprise and something that might have been fear. How many ships? He asked his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. They appear to be arriving from multiple systems. Current count is over 300 vessels. Impossible, Velkoth hissed. Humans don't have that many military ships in this sector. Sir, many of them appear to be converted civilian vessels. Cargo ships, passenger liners, even mining ships, they've been armed for battle. Velkoth's scales clicked together in agitation. This was not how wars were supposed to work. You didn't arm civilian ships and send them against a professional military. It was chaos. It was insanity. It was completely human. Send a message to the High Command, he ordered. Tell them we may need reinforcements. But the High Command was dealing with problems of their own. Across the Empire, resistance groups were attacking Cathari facilities. Someone had given them detailed information about security weaknesses and guard rotations. Planets that had been quiet for decades were suddenly in revolt. Jiwon tried one last time to find a peaceful solution. She sent messages to every Cathari, diplomatic contact she had, offering to negotiate Taemin's release and end the crisis before it became a war. The response came back within hours. The human will be executed as an example. Any ships that interfere will be destroyed. This is the Cathari way. Well, Jiwon said to So-ra. I tried. So-ra nodded. She understood what this meant. There would be no backing down, no compromise. The Cathari had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. Taemin struggled out of his medical bed and made his way to the bridge. He was still weak, but he needed to see what was happening. Through the main view screen, he could see the gathering human fleet. Ships of every size and type, all coming together for one purpose. They're here because of me, he said quietly. No, So-ra corrected him. They're here because of what was done to you, because of what the Cathari think they can do to any of us. Taemin watched the ships continue to arrive. Each one represented hundreds or thousands of humans who had made the same choice. One of theirs had been hurt, and that could not stand. The Cathari wanted to understand human pack bonding, he said. I think they're about to get a very thorough education. The awakening was complete. Humanity had been pushed too far, and now they were pushing back. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you tortured one human and threatened to execute the people who rescued him. War was coming, but it wouldn't be the kind of war the Cathari understood. This would be a war fought by a species that refused to abandon their own, no matter the cost. War Master Velkoth had never experienced failure before. In 200 years of military service, he had conquered 17 star systems for the Cathari Empire. Every species had submitted to superior force. Every enemy had broken under pressure. But these humans were different. Report, he demanded from his tactical officer. The human ship is still evading our forces, sir. They've escaped from 3 separate ambushes using tactics we don't understand. Velkoth's claws scraped against the metal of his command chair. The Dawn's Promise should have been destroyed days ago. It was a small exploration vessel with light weapons and basic shields. His battle group had enough firepower to destroy 100 such ships, yet somehow they kept slipping away. Show me their latest escape route, he ordered. The main display showed the Dawn's Promise's path through an asteroid field. The human ship had flown between rocks that were barely wider than the ship itself, moving at speeds that should have meant certain death. No sane pilot would attempt such a maneuver. Computer analysis says this flight path was impossible, the tactical officer reported. The reaction time required exceeds known biological limits. Then how did they do it? Velkoth demanded. Unknown, sir. On the Dawn's promise, Kyung-soo wiped sweat from his forehead. The asteroid field maneuver had been close, but he'd had help. Every member of the crew had been watching sensors, calling out obstacles and clearances. 12 minds working as one, each trusting the others completely. That was some flying, Hyunwoo said from his weapons station. Couldn't have done it alone, Kyung-soo replied. When Ji-hai called out that power reading from Asteroid 7, I knew to swing wide. When Minho spotted the gap between rocks 12 and 15, I knew where to go. The Kethari don't fight like that, Taemin observed. He was back on his feet now, helping with ship operations despite Dr. Yoon-soo's protests. Each of their ships operates independently. Their captains don't trust each other enough to coordinate like we do. Sora nodded. That's their weakness. They see cooperation as a sign of inferiority. Each captain wants to be the one who captures us personally. This was proving to be true. The Kethari fleet kept splitting up, with individual ships trying to outflank the Dawn's promise alone. They wanted the glory of the capture for themselves. It made them predictable and vulnerable. 3 more ships coming in from starboard, Minho reported. Same pattern as before. They're not talking to each other. Ji-hai, can you give us a sensor ghost? Sora asked. Already on it, Captain. Ji-hai's fingers flew over her controls. Dumping metallic particles behind us. In 30 seconds, their sensors will think we're in 3 places at once. The Kethari ships took the bait. They split up to chase 3 false targets, leaving their formation broken and confused. By the time they realized their mistake, the Dawn's promise was long gone, but the chase was taking its toll. The ship's systems were being pushed beyond their limits. Weapon capacitors were overheating. The engines needed maintenance that couldn't be done while running at full power. How much longer can we keep this up? Sora asked Ji-hai privately. Maybe 2 more days, the engineer replied. After that, something critical is going to break, and we don't have spare parts for everything. Sora nodded grimly. They needed to reach the gathering human fleet soon, or the chase would end with their capture or death. War Master Velkoth was having similar thoughts. His ships were also showing strain from the extended pursuit. More importantly, his reputation was suffering with every failed attempt to catch the humans. Sir, his communications officer said, we're receiving a message from the High Command. The face that appeared on his screen was that of Supreme War Master Kethvor, the highest military leader in the Empire. His scales were darker with age, and his yellow eyes held no warmth. Velkoth, the Supreme War Master said, explain to me how one small human ship has evaded your entire battle group for 6 days. The humans fight with no honor, Velkoth replied. They use tricks and deceptions instead of facing us in proper battle. I care nothing for honor, Kethvor snapped. I care about results. You were ordered to capture these humans and execute them publicly. Instead, you have made our military look weak before the entire galaxy. Give me more ships, Supreme War Master. I will crush them. You already have 50 ships. How many more? Do you need to catch 12 humans? Velkoth had no good answer for that question. Furthermore, Kethvor continued, our intelligence reports that other human ships are gathering at the edge of our territory. Hundreds of them. This simple capture mission may become something larger. The humans would not dare attack us, Velkoth said, but his voice lacked conviction. Wouldn't they? You have one of their kind. You tortured him for weeks. Now you're hunting the ones who rescued him. From what I understand of human psychology, this is exactly the kind of provocation that would unite them. The communication ended, leaving Velkoth alone with his doubts. He had studied human military capabilities before starting this chase. Their technology was inferior to Kethari equipment. Their ships were smaller and less heavily armed. By all logical analysis, they should pose no threat, but logic seemed to have little to do with human behavior. On the Dawn's promise, Taemin was working with the crew to analyze Kethari tactical patterns. His time in captivity had taught him things about their military mindset that could be useful. They always attack in the same formations, he explained to Sora and Hyunwoo. Triangle formations for small groups, diamond formations for larger fleets. They never deviate from the patterns they learned in training. What about when they're surprised? Hyunwoo asked. They fall back to standard procedures. Always. Even when the procedures don't fit the situation. That's why your escape plans keep working. You're doing things their training never prepared them for. Sora studied the tactical displays. What if we stopped running? Captain? Kyung-soo looked confused. What if we turned around and attacked them? Not to win, just to confuse them even more. That would be suicide, Yun-soo said. Maybe. Or maybe it would buy us the time we need to reach the fleet. Sora looked around at her crew. They expect us to keep running. They have formations designed to chase fleeing enemies. But what formations do they use against enemies who attack? Taemin smiled for the first time in weeks. None. Their doctrine assumes that inferior species always run from superior force. If you attack them, they'll have to improvise. And improvisation isn't their strength, Hyunwoo added. The plan was insane. But it might work. The Dawn's promise would pretend to suffer engine failure. When the Cathari ships closed in for capture, the human ship would suddenly come to life and attack. Not to destroy the alien vessels, but to scatter them and create chaos. Remember, Sora told her crew, we're not trying to win a fight. We're just trying to break their formation and get past them. The trap was set in a system with a large gas giant and several moons. The Dawn's promise sent out a distress signal and limped toward the planet, apparently losing engine power. Velkoth's ships responded exactly as predicted. They moved in using standard capture formation, expecting no resistance from a crippled vessel. Now, Sora ordered. The Dawn's promise came alive like a striking snake. Engines at full power, weapons blazing, it dove straight at the center of the Cathari formation. The alien ships were so surprised that for several crucial seconds they didn't even return fire. By the time they reacted, the human ship was already past them, racing toward the edge of the system. The Cathari formation scattered as each captain tried to turn his ship to pursue. Two ships collided in the confusion, damaging both vessels. Impossible, Velkoth roared. How did they restore engine power so quickly? Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, I don't think they ever lost engine power. The distress signal may have been false. You mean they tricked us? The concept was almost incomprehensible to the War Master. Military forces didn't lie about being damaged. It violated every principle of honorable combat. It appears so, sir. Velkoth stared at the tactical display, watching the human ship pull away from his scattered fleet. These beings fought without honor, without following any civilized rules of warfare. They were more dangerous than any enemy he had ever faced, precisely because they were so unpredictable. All ships, pursue at maximum speed, he ordered, and this time, assume nothing about human intentions. The chase continued, but now both sides understood each other better. The Cathari knew that humans would use any trick to survive. The humans knew that their enemies were powerful but rigid in their thinking. Long-range sensors are picking up something, Minho reported. Dead ahead, at the edge of our sensor range. What is it? Sora asked. Ships, Captain. Lots of them, and they're broadcasting human identification codes. Sora felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had made it. The gathering fleet was just ahead, and with it safety for her crew and her ship. But as they got closer, she realized this was more than just a rescue operation. The fleet waiting for them was massive. Hundreds of ships from across human space. Military vessels, armed merchant ships, even converted civilian craft. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled. My God, Taemin whispered, staring at the view screen. They're not just here to rescue us, are they? No, Sora replied. They're here to make sure this never happens to another human being. Ever. Behind them, the human fleet was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from every corner of human space floated together in formations that defied military logic. Massive battleships flew alongside tiny courier vessels. Luxury passenger liners bristled with hastily mounted weapons. Mining ships had been converted into missile platforms. Captain Sang-wook stood on the bridge of the Yao, heavy cruiser Retribution, watching new arrivals appear every hour. He was a career military officer who had spent 30 years following orders. Today he was breaking the biggest order of his career. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "Earth Command is demanding to know why we left our patrol sector." "Tell them. We're conducting emergency rescue operations," Sang-wook replied. It wasn't technically a lie. They were here to rescue Tae-min and the crew of the Dawn's Promise. They were also here to rescue every other human who might face Cathari torture in the future. "Admiral Chen is on the encrypted channel," his communications officer reported. "She wants to speak with you personally." Sang-wook took the call in his private office. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen, and she did not look happy. "Captain Sang-wook," she said, "you were ordered to maintain station at the Proxima checkpoint. Instead, you've taken your entire squadron into potentially hostile territory. Explain yourself." "Ma'am, I have reports of Cathari forces threatening human civilians. I felt immediate action was necessary." "Don't play word games with me, Captain. This is about the torture victim, isn't it, Dr. Taemin?" Sang-wook was quiet for a moment. He could lie, make up some excuse about patrol duties or navigation errors, but Admiral Chen deserved the truth. "Yes, ma'am, it is. Do you understand what you're risking? If this turns into a shooting war with the Cathari Empire, millions of people could die. With respect, Admiral, people are already dying. They're dying in Cathari laboratories. They're being tortured and experimented on because the galaxy thinks humans won't fight back." Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. She had read the medical reports from Dr. Yun-soo. She knew what had been done to Tae-min. "Captain, I understand your anger, but you can't start an interstellar war without authorization." "I'm not starting a war, Admiral. I'm ending one. The Cathari have been at war with human dignity for years. We just never fought back before." The conversation ended with Admiral Chen ordering Sang-wook to return to base immediately. He acknowledged the order and then promptly ignored it. Some things were more important than career advancement. On Earth, the political situation was becoming chaotic. G1's diplomatic efforts had failed completely. The Cathari refused all attempts at negotiation. Their position was simple. The humans would surrender for execution, or they would be hunted down and killed. "We need to find a way to de-escalate this," President Kim told his cabinet. "A war with the Cathari could devastate both civilizations." "What do you suggest?" asked Defense Minister Park. "Our people are being tortured in alien laboratories. Ship captains are disobeying orders to go rescue them. Half the fleet has gone rogue." "Not rogue," corrected Intelligence Director Choi. "They're following a higher loyalty to their fellow humans." President Kim understood the problem. On paper, he was the leader of humanity. In reality, he was just one voice among billions. And right now, those billions were speaking with one voice: protect the family. Youngjia continued her work coordinating with resistance movements across Cathari territory. The news of Taemin's rescue had spread to every oppressed world in the Fang Empire. For the first time in decades, people were fighting back. "The prison facility on Drakmore 7th has been liberated," she reported to her superiors. "The prisoners were mostly human research subjects. They're being evacuated to safe territory." "How did the resistance manage that?" asked her supervisor. "Someone provided them with detailed facility blueprints and guard rotations. They knew exactly where to strike and when." The someone was Tae-min himself. During his captivity, he had memorized everything he could about Cathari security procedures. That information was now being used to free hundreds of other victims. Commander Hai-wan worked around the clock in her strategic planning center. She was analyzing every piece of intelligence about Cathari military capabilities, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. "Their fleet doctrine is based on overwhelming force," she explained to her staff. "They mass their ships into large formations and attack enemy positions directly. It's very effective against conventional opponents." "But we're not conventional opponents," her second-in-command observed. "Exactly. They expect us to either surrender or fight using standard military tactics. We're going to do neither." Hae-won's plan was taking shape. Instead of meeting the Cathari in traditional ship-to-ship combat, human forces would use their natural advantages, flexibility, creativity, and absolute refusal to abandon each other. Thior. Dawn's promise finally reached the safety of the human fleet. As soon as they docked with the hospital ship Mercy, Dr. Yun-Su rushed Tae-min to better medical facilities. His physical wounds were healing, but the psychological damage would take longer to repair. "How are you holding up?" Sora asked him as he lay in the hospital bed. "Better," Tae-min replied. "Knowing that all these people came here because of what happened to me, it helps. It makes the suffering mean something." "The suffering was never acceptable," Sora said firmly. "But you're right. It means something. Now, it means the galaxy is going to change." Through the hospital windows, they could see the growing fleet. Ships continued to arrive hourly, each one carrying humans who had made the same choice. One of their own had been hurt, and that could not stand. War Master Velkoth finally caught up with the Dawn's promise, only to find himself facing an impossibility. His 50 ships were outnumbered 6-1 by the human fleet. This should have been a simple police action, but it had become something much larger. "Supreme War Master," he reported to Kethivor, "the situation has evolved." "I can see that," came the cold reply. "How did humans gather so many ships so quickly?" "Unknown, sir. Our intelligence suggested they had fewer than 100 military vessels in this sector. The majority of ships facing us appear to be civilian craft that have been armed for combat." "Civilian ships? They're sending merchants and farmers to fight. Trained warriors?" "It appears so, sir." There was a long pause before Kethfor responded. "This makes no sense. Civilian populations don't voluntarily enter military conflicts. They should be pressuring their government to negotiate a peaceful solution." But that assumption was based on Cathari understanding of how societies worked. In the Cathari Empire, civilians obeyed the warrior caste without question. The idea of ordinary citizens taking up arms to protect each other was completely foreign. Colonel Dong-hyun arrived with a battle group of marine assault ships. He was officially retired from active duty, but hundreds of former Marines had volunteered to serve under him again. They came in their own ships with their own weapons, united by bonds stronger than military regulations. "Sir," his aide reported, "Earth Command is threatening court-martial for any active duty personnel who don't return to base immediately." "Let them threaten," Dong-hyun replied. "Some things are more important than avoiding court-martial, like making sure no human ever gets tortured in a Cathari lab again." The human fleet was more than just ships and weapons. It was a statement to the galaxy. Humanity would not be victims anymore. They would protect their own no matter the cost. Mi-kyung commanded a squadron of fighter pilots who had borrowed their ships from the naval base on Titan. They were all young, barely out of training, but they flew with the confidence of veterans. "Why are we here?" one of her pilots asked over the comm system. "Because someone hurt one of us," Mi-kyung replied simply. "And because no one should have to face torture alone." Jae-hyun brought his destroyer and its crew of volunteers from the Merchant Marine. They weren't trained for military combat, but they understood the mission. Protect the family, all of it. In-Su, Earth's most experienced diplomat, arrived on Diobrais, a diplomatic vessel that had been quietly armed with military-grade weapons. His mission was to try one more time for a peaceful solution. But if talking failed, he was prepared for other options. "The Cathari are offering terms," he reported to the fleet commanders. "They'll release Dr. Tae-min and end the pursuit of the Dawn's promise in exchange for a formal human apology and reparations for the rescue operation." The response was immediate and universal. "Absolutely not. They torture our people and then demand we apologize for rescuing them." Sang-wook asked, "What kind of universe do they think they live in?" "The kind where might makes right," In-Su replied. "The kind where superior technology means you can do whatever you want to inferior species. They genuinely don't understand why we're angry." "Then it's time to educate them," Dong-hyun said. The storm was gathering. On one side, the Cathari Empire with its rigid hierarchy, superior technology, and absolute confidence in their own superiority. On the other side, humanity with its chaotic organization, jury-rigged weapons, and absolute refusal to let anyone hurt their family. War Master Velkoth stared at the human fleet and felt something he had never experienced before. Uncertainty. Everything he under. The message began broadcasting across the galaxy at exactly noon, Earth Standard Time. Tai-Min sat in front of a camera aboard the hospital ship Mercy, his wounds still visible, his voice steady despite everything he had endured. "My name is Dr. Tai-Min," he said to the camera. "I am a human xenobiologist. For 47 days I was held prisoner by the Cathari Empire. They tortured me. They experimented on me. They tried to understand what they called the pack bonding disease that makes humans care about each other. The transmission was being sent to every communications network in known space. Cathari officials tried to jam it, but human hackers had infiltrated their systems. The message got through. They wanted to know why humans risk themselves for other humans. Why we don't abandon the weak or sacrifice individuals for the greater good. They thought this made us inferior. Defective, something to be cured." Tai-Min held up his scarred hands to the camera. "These are the scars they gave me trying to cure human compassion. These are the marks they made trying to understand love. On 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. This was the first time any species had publicly described Cathari research methods. The clinical details were horrifying, but worse was the casual cruelty behind them. But I want the Cathari to understand something," Tai-Min continued. "You didn't just torture one human, you tortured part of every human. When you hurt me, you hurt all of us. And now you're going to learn what that means." War Master Velkoth watched the transmission from his flagship. Around him, his officers stood in uncomfortable silence. The human's words were more dangerous than any weapon. "Turn it off," Velkoth ordered. "Sir, the signal is being broadcast on all frequencies. We can't block it." "Then jam their transmission." "We're trying, sir. But they've infiltrated our communication networks. Every time we block one signal, 3 more appear." The message continued. Tai-Min was now joined by other voices, humans who had been rescued from Cathari laboratories, family members of those who hadn't been so lucky, scientists who documented the evidence of systematic torture. But the most powerful moment came when Captain Sora appeared on screen beside Tai-Min. "The Cathari expect us to be afraid," she said. "They think their superior technology and larger ships will make us submit. They don't understand that we're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for something they can't comprehend. The idea that every thinking being deserves dignity and freedom from torture." Supreme War Master Kethfor watched the broadcast from his command center deep in Cathari space. For the first time in decades, he felt worried. The humans weren't just appealing to sympathy. They were systematically exposing the Empire's methods to every species in the galaxy. "Sir," his intelligence chief reported, "we're receiving reports of uprisings on 17 occupied worlds. Resistance movements are using the human transmission as a rallying cry." "Crush them," Kethfor ordered. "Sir, our forces are already stretched thin. If these rebellions spread, they won't spread. Once we destroy the human fleet, other species will remember their place." But Kethfor wasn't as confident as he sounded. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had made the Cathari Empire's victims visible to the galaxy. In space, near the edge of Cathari territory, the 2 fleets faced each other. The Cathari formation was perfect, ships arranged in precise geometric patterns, each vessel in its assigned position. They looked like a machine built for destruction. The human fleet looked like chaos. Ships of different sizes and types scattered across space with no apparent organization. Military vessels mixed with converted civilian craft. No 2 ships were the same design. "They have no formation discipline," Velkoth observed. "This will be easier than expected." But Commander Haywan was watching from her flagship, and she saw something different. The human fleet wasn't chaotic, it was organic, like a living thing that could adapt and change as needed. "All ships," she broadcast on the fleet frequency, "remember the plan. We're not trying to match their firepower. We're trying to do something they can't understand. Work together as one family." The battle began when Velkoth's fleet opened fire at maximum range. Massive energy beams lanced across space designed to shatter human ships before they could get close enough to fight back. But the human ships weren't where the Cathari expected them to be. They scattered in all directions, moving in patterns that seemed random but weren't. Each ship was part of a larger plan that existed only in the collective mind of the human fleet. Mi Kyung led her fighter squadron in a diving attack on the Cathari left flank. Her pilots flew in formations that shifted and changed every few seconds, making it impossible for alien gunners to track them. "Stay close to your wingman," she ordered over the comm system. "Trust your squad mates. They'll keep you alive." The Cathari fighters moved in rigid formations, each pilot following predetermined attack patterns. They were skilled and disciplined, but they couldn't adapt when the humans did something unexpected. "They're flying like they're connected," one Cathari pilot reported. "Like they share one mind." "Impossible," his squadron leader replied. "Maintain formation. Follow standard attack procedures." But the standard procedures weren't working. The Audai human fighters moved like a flock of birds, each one reacting instantly to changes in the group. When one pilot was in trouble, others immediately moved to help. When an opportunity appeared, the entire squadron responded as one. Jae-hyun brought his destroyer in close to the Cathari battle line, drawing fire away from smaller human ships. His vessel wasn't built for this kind of punishment, but he held position until his shields failed and his hull began to buckle. "Captain," his tactical officer said, "we need to withdraw. The ship can't take much more." "Negative," Jae-hyun replied. "The medical ships are still evacuating wounded. We hold position. Sir, if we stay here, we'll be destroyed. Then we'll be destroyed. But those medical ships will make it to safety." The Cathari couldn't understand this behavior. Military vessels were supposed to preserve themselves, not sacrifice themselves for non-combat ships. It violated every principle of logical warfare. But Jae-hyun's sacrifice gave the human fleet something invaluable: time. While the Cathari focused their fire on his destroyer, other human ships moved into position around them. Dong-hyun's Marines launched boarding actions against 3 Cathari vessels simultaneously. The aliens were prepared for conventional space combat, but not for humans who would ram their ships into enemy hulls and fight corridor to corridor. "They're inside the ship," a Cathari officer reported in panic. "They're fighting in the corridors." "How many?" his commander demanded. "Unknown. They're moving in small groups using tactics we don't recognize." The Marines didn't fight like the Cathari expected soldiers to fight. They adapted to each situation, covering each other's movements, working together with an instinctive coordination that came from absolute trust. "Room clear," one Marine reported as his team secured a section of the ship. "Copy that, Sung-ho," his sergeant replied. "Ji-woo's team has the engine room. Myung-soo is holding the bridge approach. You link up with Yeonju and secure the weapons." Systems. Each Marine knew exactly where his teammates were and what they were doing. They fought as one organism with many parts, each part supporting the others. The tide of battle began to turn. The Cathari ships were more powerful individually, but they couldn't match the coordinated effort of the human fleet. Every time they destroyed one human vessel, 2 more appeared to take its place. "How is this possible?" Velkoth demanded. "We have superior technology, superior training." "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "I think their advantage isn't technological." "What do you mean?" "They fight differently than we do. When one of their ships is damaged, others immediately move to help. When they attack, every ship supports every other ship. They're not fighting as individual vessels. They're fighting as one giant ship with hundreds of parts." Velkoth stared at the tactical display. His perfect formations were being torn apart by an enemy that refused to follow the rules of proper warfare. The breakthrough came when Captain Sang-wook's battle group punched through the Cathari center. His heavy cruisers had taken terrible damage, but they kept fighting, kept pushing forward, because they knew other humans were counting on them. "All ships," Haewon broadcast. "The center is broken. Execute breakthrough maneuver." The entire human fleet surged forward like water through a broken dam. Cathari ships found themselves surrounded, cut off from their support, facing enemies who seemed to know exactly how to exploit every weakness. War Master Velkoth realized his position was hopeless. Half his fleet was destroyed or captured. The other half was scattered and demoralized. In any rational universe he would withdraw and regroup, but the Cathari Empire didn't accept defeat. It had never accepted defeat. "All ships," he ordered, "prepare for final assault. We will ram the human flagship and destroy their command structure." It was a desperate move, but it might work. If he could kill the human commanders, they're coordinated. Attacks might fall apart. But Velkoth had misunderstood something fundamental about humans. They weren't fighting because their commanders ordered it. They were fighting because they chose to fight. Because one of their own had been hurt, and that could not stand. When Velkoth's flagship dove toward the Hue 6 months after the battle, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Cathari Empire, which had dominated 40 star systems for 3 centuries, had surrendered to a species they had considered primitive and weak. Ambassador Insu stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral world of Harmony Station. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the great assembly hall, all waiting to hear what humanity wanted as the price of their victory. "Honored delegates," Insu began, "the question before us today is simple. What kind of galaxy do we want to live in?" Supreme Counselor Vexithani, a crystalline being from the Andromeda sector, spoke for many when she said, "The humans have won a great victory. By tradition, they may claim the Cathari worlds as tribute. They may enslave the population. They may impose whatever terms they choose." Insu shook his head. "We want none of that." A murmur of confusion ran through the assembly. Every species in galactic history had followed the same pattern after victory: conquest, exploitation, domination. It was the natural order of things. Then, "What do you want?" asked Counselor Mordak of the hegemony. "We want a promise," Insu said simply. "A promise that what happened to Dr. Taemin will never happen to anyone else. Ever." The presentation that followed shocked the assembly. Human investigators had spent months documenting Cathari research facilities across the Empire. The evidence was overwhelming. Systematic torture, illegal experiments, the treatment of entire species as laboratory animals. For 300 years, Insu continued, the Cathari have been conducting what they called scientific research on unwilling subjects from dozens of species. They justified this by claiming their subjects were inferior beings who didn't deserve rights. Images flashed on the great display screens, laboratories full of cages, beings of various species subjected to horrific procedures, research notes that discussed sentient creatures like they were objects. "How many of your species have lost people to these facilities?" Insu asked the assembly. "How many families have wondered what happened to loved ones who disappeared in Cathari space?" The silence was profound. Every species in the galaxy had lost people to the Cathari. They had all accepted it as the price of dealing with a superior military power. "This ends now," Insu declared. "Humanity proposes the establishment of the Galactic Protection Protocol. No species may conduct experiments on unwilling sentient subjects. No species may claim superiority over others based on technology or military power. And any species that violates these principles will face the united response of all civilized worlds." The debate that followed lasted for days. Many species argued that the humans were being naive, that might had always made right in galactic affairs, that the strong naturally ruled the weak. But something had changed in the galaxy's political balance. The human victory had shown that unity and determination could overcome superior technology. Smaller species that had always lived in fear of their neighbors suddenly saw new possibilities. On the former Cathari homeworld, a different kind of change was taking place. Colonel Donghyun oversaw the dismantling of research facilities and the liberation of their prisoners. It was heartbreaking work. Many of the test subjects had been so broken by their treatment that they could barely function. "How many?" he asked Dr. Yunsu, who was leading the medical teams treating the survivors. "We've found over 2,000 beings in the facilities we've searched so far," she replied. "Most of them have been prisoners for years, some for decades. Kanye, They be helped? Some can. Others, Yunsu's voice trailed off. The psychological damage is severe. It will take time. But time was something they now had. The human fleet maintained a protective presence throughout former Cathari space, ensuring that the liberation efforts could continue without interference. Taemin worked with the medical teams, using his own experience to help other survivors. He had nightmares about his captivity, but he also had something many of the other prisoners lacked: hope. They're free now, he told a group of rescued prisoners during a therapy session. The people who hurt us can never hurt anyone again. How? Can you be sure? Asked one survivor, a small furry being whose species Taemin didn't recognize. Because humans don't forget, Taemin replied. And we don't abandon family. You're part of the human family now, whether you want to be or not. That means you're protected. It was a radical concept, extending the human notion of family to include any being who had suffered. But it was also practical. The galaxy needed to understand that humanity would not tolerate the systematic abuse of any sentient species. Captain Sora received a new assignment, commanding one of the new protection fleet vessels. These ships, built with combined human and alien technology, patrolled space looking for signs of illegal research or systematic oppression. Contact on long-range sensors, reported her new tactical officer, Wu Jin. He was young, like most of her crew, but he understood the mission completely. What kind of contact? Distress signal from the Rigel system, claims to be from a research station under attack. Sora felt a familiar chill. Research station could mean legitimate science, but it could also mean something darker. Set course for Rigel, she ordered, and send word to Fleet Command. If this is what I think it is, we're going to need backup. The station in the Rigel system turned out to be exactly what Sora had feared. A hidden facility where a species called the Vortak were conducting illegal experiments on captured beings. The researchers scattered when human ships appeared, abandoning their test subjects to die. But they didn't die. Human medical teams arrived within hours, treating the survivors and documenting the evidence. The Vortak government was presented with a choice: shut down all such facilities voluntarily, or face the same fate as the Cathari Empire. They chose to shut down the facilities. Back on Earth, the political implications of humanity's new role were still being debated. President Kim met with his cabinet to discuss the latest reports from the protection fleet. We've shut down 17 illegal research facilities in the past 6 months, Defense Minister Park reported. We've rescued over 5,000 beings, and we've done it all without firing a shot. Because they're afraid of us now, added Intelligence Director Choi. The Cathari defeat sent a message across the galaxy. Humanity will protect the innocent, and we have the power to enforce that. Protection. Are we ready for this responsibility? President Kim asked. Being the galaxy's police force? We don't have a choice, Minister Park replied. If we don't do it, who will? The strong prey on the weak. That's been the rule of galactic civilization. For millennia, someone has to change that rule. The change was already happening. Species that had never cooperated before were working together under human leadership to establish refugee centers, medical facilities, and rehabilitation programs for torture survivors. Commander Hei-Wan coordinated these efforts from her headquarters on Luna. Her staff included representatives from dozens of species, all working toward the same goal, making sure that what happened to Taemin would never happen to anyone else. The Cathari war trials begin next week, her aide reported. Over 300 defendants, including most of their former research staff. Good, Hei-Wan replied. Justice delayed is justice denied. These beings need to know that their actions have consequences. The trials were held on Harmony Station, presided over by a panel of judges from multiple species. The evidence was overwhelming. Detailed records of torture, experimentation, and systematic cruelty, but the most powerful testimony came from the survivors themselves. Beings from across the galaxy stood up and told their stories of capture, torture, and eventual rescue. Many could barely speak. Others wept as they described their experiences. Taemin testified on the final day of the main trial. He looked directly at the defendant, the former chief scientist who had supervised his torture. "You wanted to understand human pack bonding," he said. "You thought it was a weakness, something that could be cured or exploited. But you never understood what it really meant." The Cathari scientist stared back with the same cold yellow eyes that had watched Taemin suffer. "Pack bonding means we care about each other," Taemin continued. "It means we protect the weak, help the injured, and never abandon our family. You thought this made us weak. Instead, it made us strong enough to defeat your entire empire." The verdicts were unanimous. The research scientists were convicted of crimes against sentient beings. Some were sentenced to rehabilitation programs. Others, whose crimes were too severe for redemption, were sentenced to life imprisonment on worlds where they could never again harm the innocent. But the most important verdict came from the galaxy itself. Species after species signed the Galactic Protection Protocol. They agreed to end systematic oppression, illegal experimentation, and the philosophy that might made right. Captain Sang-wook, now an admiral in the protection fleet, watched the signing ceremony from his flagship. His crew included beings from a dozen different species, all united by a common purpose. "Do you think it will work?" his second-in-command asked. She was a Centaurian named Vel-Anna, who had been one of the first aliens to volunteer for human service. "It has to,"